Right.
Good to go.
Okay, thanks very much, RP. I think we all know that COVID-19 has really changed everything we knew prior to COVID-19 about many things about our customers, how they behaved, contents that would be relevant, and we had to, in many ways, adjust our content marketing strategy, especially when we think of the post-COVID-19. And we've heard many people mention about how the Maslow's hierarchy of needs have sort of crumbled and people are really focusing much more on the basics, on safety needs and psychological needs. And coming from the travel space, I think if we are going to have a quiz show now, and if you ask which of the following about travel is true today, I think a year ago, people would say that, well, travel is very much an essential, but now I think many people would say that it's postponable, if not expandable. Obviously, coming from the airline, I hope that's not the case. And we have been really spending the past month listening attentively to what our customers are saying and what the wider audience is saying. And initially, there's a lot of concern about over safety, over hygiene. So we had to repurpose a lot of our communication message around communicating information around safe travel. But then we also heard people saying that they are not able to travel to Japan and hence they want more content concerning Japan. So we put up a lot of content about things Japanese, things like Japanese tea ceremony, how you leave all earthly things aside when you walk into a tea room and focus on just being mindful over a cup of tea and think of nothing else. And all the ceremonial procedures that we have, the tools that we use in tea ceremony. And we have people asking about what is Japanese service, what is special about what you call omotenashi. So we went on explaining about the importance of every single encounter. We also did quite a bit on learning Japanese, because we had comments, people asking us, well, it's a good time to learn something new. Why not Japanese phrases, simple Japanese phrases? So we put up quite a bit of that on our social media as well. Currently, it's lovely season to travel to Japan, and many people are missing that. So we've been putting up a lot of content around lovely, sort of beautiful scenic views of autumn in Japan. Many people are spending more time at home, so we even have a home bingo and all that. But having said that, though, we understand that there's still huge level of anxiety in the air, that people are still very concerned about lots of uncertainties. But having said that, though, I think people are also trying to find hope, to not necessarily be optimistic, but at least to be hopeful that things will begin to improve. And it is, after all, in a way, ironically, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us all to stop, think, reflect, and see how we can change. And that was very much the message also in the earlier lovely presentation by Tara from IBM. Advocating change is something that we hear a lot in the conversation. So today, although initially I thought of really doing the do's and don'ts, and I do actually have a long list on both sides, I thought, well, more than 6 months now into COVID-19, I think most of us would have at least pretty good idea, at least for the industry or their brand, what the do's and don'ts are. So I won't really delve into that per se. Indeed, people talk a lot about, well, we should be doing more virtual celebrations or maybe nostalgia marketing or well-being marketing, empathetic marketing and all that. And some people might even conclude that, in short, customers are increasingly valuing attributes that give meaning. And they are true, but the focus of this short presentation will be really on this question. Where is the conversation heading? Because if we are planning for post-COVID-19 content marketing, where's all this heading? So I'll be focused on 3 aspects. One is really me, the consumer, and secondly, the brand. It could be your industry. In my case, it will be aviation, airline travel, and the wider context of the environment and the world in which we're living in. So I start with looking at norms and sentiments, which will be sort of one of the three things I'll be speaking of. We are moving at amazing speed now, and ironically, I think many people have already mentioned how the COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation, but obviously it's not just digital transformation, it's many things going on currently. And I just had a very interesting conversation a couple of days ago with a group of Gen Ys and Zs, and I asked them, aren't you worried and concerned? And they replied to me that, well, actually not really. We eat change for breakfast. We are all change natives. We know how to deal with change. And they also said to me that, well, times have changed. I mean, your generation would be focusing on things that are tangible. For us, we look at things, we value things that are intangible. Obviously, it's both, but just as an example, they told me that they've opened a mocktail bar, for example. And I asked them, well, mocktail bar, what's so special about it? And they said to me that, well, you don't see it, don't you? But the thing is, it's not just about 0% alcohol. Zero signifies it's neither positive nor negative. So you don't have to be something who you're not. You don't have to pretend to be someone. Zero signifies it's just being yourself, to be who you are intended to be your original self, to be truthful to yourself. And it's these messages, these ideas, these concepts, which in this case just happens to be a mocktail bar, are things that resonate a lot to at least our group, our generation. So that was just an example that I thought was interesting to signify that values are changing to currently. But just to what I mentioned earlier on about anxiety, is it true that Gens Ys and Zs, they are not worried about all the changes that we see? Not quite true. And if some of you may have heard the message that the phenomenal K-pop group BTS gave at the General Assembly. The IPO was a huge success last month, by the way. And they talked a lot about feeling lonely, feeling frustrated, depressed, and lost. And the common message that they gave us was that it's now we have to really think more about not just me, but you, us together, how we can together collectively build up the kind of social norms we want to see in this new normal. And I think this comes from really our experience of many materialistic things moving at phenomenal speed. And to the extent that sometimes it's very hard for the human mind, for us in a spiritual sense and mental sense, be able to really catch up with the pace in which change is happening. And we also tend to forget that it's like us on the boat and just flowing down these rapid waters. And we forget that we have actually an option to get off the boat, to stand at the riverbank and just spend some time thinking where we should be heading. And indeed, recently we hear people talking a lot more about spiritual well-being, about our spiritual growth. And in the United States, many people identify themselves as SBNR, which means spiritual but not religious. And based on a Pew Research survey, we have some figures that do show that increasingly more people do subscribe to the idea that we need to slow down a little bit and think of our own spiritual well-being and not just our materialistic well-being. And we have indeed in Japan Airlines just recently started broadcasting messages on mindfulness, on ikigai, with neuroscientist Ken Mugi. Please do check it out on YouTube or LinkedIn. We have a weekly session, a very short snippet of ideas around how ikigai or mindfulness can help us live better lives. But spiritual and not religious. Why not religious? It could come from the idea that people just want to have freedom. People don't want to have ideas imposed on them. It's maybe a little bit of anti-establishment, but again, this is the idea of how we sense what people want and need currently. So what's all this talk about? Why social norms? Because we believe that behavior is changing in many aspects. And in order for behavioral change to happen, we need three things at least. We need to have a change in attitude. So take the case of wearing face masks. If I have the belief that wearing face coverings is good for my health, protecting me and people around me, and if there's this subjective norm that many people subscribe to this idea, and if there's some level of control, me being able to control this action, then yes, it's quite likely that there's going to be behavioral change. Take another example of, for example, contactless solution, a lot of digitalization of things. I think many younger generation, well, not necessarily younger generation, I think many people do like the idea of having things really at our fingertips, the ease of having everything being able to be maneuvered in a digital manner and avoid physical contact, especially now as we face COVID-19. But then when we think of inclusiveness in terms of perceived control, many older people, my grandparents, for example, would say that they have difficulty using all these gadgets, all these new technologies. So they don't see a perceived control in this, and hence there will not be behavioral change. And this is a good way for us to, at the same time, look at what changes are temporary and which are the ones that will really be lasting changes. What are the behaviors that people adopt currently but would revert to the previous habits once we have moved out of this phase? Things like working from home, people moving out of large cities, relocating to the countryside. Is this something temporary or lasting? So it's something to think about. But again, it's really based on whether there's going to be a behavior change. We can also do things like scenario planning to think of what different scenarios, how the future will unfold differently. And many people look at the driving forces of change because that would, in a way, give us some idea as to several plausible scenarios. So just an example would be policies. That could be a driving force. Will we still have a false dichotomy of you can either have growth or good environment, or we'll possibly move towards more of a holistic growth of well-being that includes both the economy and the environment. Policies come very often from social norms. So again, here, if social norms are going to be a driving force, will we see more atomized individuals, people claiming their rights? We see more zero-sum game, or will we see more universal reciprocity, mutual network of well-being, people caring and sharing more than before? So this moves very well into my second theme, looking ahead of post-COVID-19 into the idea of wellness. Because this is such a broad topic, I won't be able to cover everything. So I'll be speaking in the context of air travel. Recently, I came across a blog which talks about the ultimate purpose of life, and it gives 3 reasons as to why travel improves well-being. So the first one was really about travel. The positive travel experience promotes physical wellness, or the stimuli you get being away from your stressful work, experiencing something new, learning something new, as well as social wellness, things like spending time with your family and friends, bonding, and all that improves your wellness, and as a result, improves your overall life satisfaction. This is very much in line with a lot of study in positive psychology, which says that positive emotion, engagement when you are in the flow state, relationships, meaning, accomplishments, these leads to happiness. So that's the first reason they gave. The second one is this a little bit subtle. It talks of travel being authentic. It's an authentic experience. It's not virtual, it's real. And it speaks of the aura which is a term used by Walter Benjamin in his very famous essay in 1936, which is called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. It talks of having you, for example, viewing Mount Fuji. It has to be you at that place in time. Anything else would not be real. So that's the real experience, authenticity that you get when you travel, which is very different from when you remove Mount Fuji from its locale and bring it to your living room, in which case you'll be jeopardizing the authenticity and authority of Mount Fuji. So it really talks about travel promoting wellness in the sense that it's something that's real, it's a real experience. And the third point about the wellness aspect of travel is that it helps us to accept difference. It helps us to be more tolerant, because when you travel, you have to be in the environment. You have to use all your senses, not just your left brain, but your right brain as well, to really understand what's going on around you. And you get to understand that a person is merely the point at which relationships intersect, and that each of us have a presence or meaning in someone else's existence. So this leads us to really accept people with very different ideas. It makes us more tolerant. Very often in social media, we hear people criticizing each other, but actually when you get to know those people, it makes you more tolerant, and it helps build solidarity. So those are the sort of three aspects on wellness. So I'll just quickly move on to my third point, which is a better tomorrow. And I think many people talk of a new normal, not just reverting to old ways, but reimagining something new, something to be excited about. And like what Tara mentioned earlier on about really having changes that would address things like racial justice. And indeed, the corporate mission of Japan Airlines, the core part of that is really about contribute to the betterment of society. And which is why in our brand statement, we use this phrase, fly into a better tomorrow, because we believe that we are part of someone's journey to a better tomorrow, whether that person is traveling on a business trip, to a honeymoon, going abroad to study. We want to be part of that journey into a better tomorrow. And we have invested in using a lot of technology. For example, currently at airports, we have deployed our avatars, actually 2 types of avatars to have more contactless solution. As a contactless solution, we invest in a vertical takeoff landing vehicles to solve existing problems we have in bringing goods to remote parts of Japan. So it's cargo and also the vertical takeoff landing taxis, and also using drones to transport, for example, medical supplies. And we've just actually started yesterday testing helicopters that could be operated far away. So sort of like remote control of a helicopter from our head office in Shinagawa, Tokyo, but then shipping things in Nagasaki, which is in south of Japan. But it's not just these new technology. We think also of new paradigms. Things like, should we think of environment, or should we think of the benefits of travel? So there is this sort of false dichotomy here. How can we solve this? We can ask the amount of environment you want to purchase, you're willing to pay for good environment, and the amount you're willing to pay for a travel. Because very often these social goods are free. We don't think much about it, but we think of having to purchase them, then maybe it helps us think of new ways of balancing, making this sustainable. We also talk a lot about in HR about we like T-shaped human talent, people who have a broad array of knowledge, but at the same time also very deep into a specific field, such as data science or in marketing and so forth. But it's not just HR in corporate. I think it's us all currently, as we in the COVID-19 situation. How can we really use all our bundle of skills, both our left and right brain, to understand the environment, to sense what's going on, and use that knowledge to shape ourselves to adjust to the situation. I think what we have been doing too much is really studying the details. So it's very much like studying the details of someone's eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, but yet you don't recognize who that person is. Well, this is a relatively easy example. I think many of you may have guessed already. It's President Donald Trump. I think many of you may have your iPhones beside you monitoring the elections going on now. Um, but just some closing remarks. I think it's absolutely important when we plan ahead in terms of content marketing to really sense what's going on currently and shape ourselves. Change brings new opportunities. So it's good also to think of all the new opportunities that we can use this opportunity in a very innovative manner. And hence we need new language. It's not just going back to January this year, but think of new language, think of the new emerging paradigm. And one example would be to think of time. It doesn't have to be linear. It doesn't have to be pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19. It doesn't have to be cyclical, like business cycles going round and round. But we can think of now as an interspace, time for us to really think of what we want and to be really in the here and now and make use of this opportunity to build contents that matter, just to echo what Tara mentioned earlier on. Thank you very much.